And that will form the basis of our first conversation this morning. And I'm getting the views of the Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Segun Ajayi Kadiri. Good morning, Mr. Kadiri. Thank you for joining us on the program. Of course, just like many others, I'm sure that you're quite excited about this directive for the reopening of 4 land borders, of course. But did this announcement come to you earlier than expected?
No, it didn't come. Well, thank you first for having me. It's a pleasure to be in touch with you again, having been away for about 10 months. I think the information didn't come to me as a surprise, neither did it come too soon. We have been expecting it, and we are glad that it has come at last. Because we did indicate that closing the border in whatever form is not a sustainable activity, and it is not something that a nation should engage if possible. We did understand the basis for government closure of the border because it was to check smuggling, which was becoming very worrisome and in alarming proportion. We also knew, according to government sources, that small arms and other trade infractions were taking place. Small arms were being imported, and there are other trade infractions are taking place across the border. So there was a basis for it, but then it was prolonged, and we were actually beginning to suffer in some measures as manufacturers in Nigeria, and I think other economic actors, especially those who perform in formal trade and even formal trade across the border. So it was becoming a measure that had outlived its usefulness and should probably have been opened before now. But it's a welcome development anyway. It's a welcome development.
Yeah, let's just go back to the reason why the borders were shut in the first place, some of which you just alluded to, talking about smuggling through the borders, the security issues, weapons proliferation and all that. Would you say that we actually achieved the aim of shutting the borders in the first place?
Well, that remains to be seen. But for a fact, some of our industries, for instance, experienced some boom in terms of restriction of the importation of those products, rice, poultry, and so on. But it is not certain to me whether we have been able to put in measures during this closure that will not return us to the situation we were before the closure. Have we, for instance, been able to ascertain the routes, the method, and the flow of those smuggled products? Have we been able to put in technology to assuage these problems? Have we been able to deepen the collaborations between the agencies of our neighboring states that will prevent a recourse to what happened before the closure of the border? Have we been able to establish the needed synergy for us to have a seamless flow of land border activities, eliminating the negative ones? Because let's face it, our borders are porous, and we are neighbors that have a history. In some places, it's very difficult for you to even identify the borderline. So we needed to develop a more sophisticated and ingenious way of ensuring that we allow only legitimate trade across the border. So have we, during this time of closure, been able to put in those measures that would justify the closure of the border? If we have not, then I don't think we have learned any lessons, and we have just lost revenue and allowed businesses to suffer. Tough decisions like this should be taken as short-term measures. It's not sustainable. And don't forget that we are into some agreements, both at the ECOWAS level and even Afcfta that is expected to kick in a matter of weeks. So these kind of measures will not normally be tolerated. But as a nation, you have to take steps to protect your citizens and to protect your economy, such as closures. But it must be short term, and you must achieve your objectives quickly and reestablish relationship. Otherwise, you start to hurt yourself, which is what has happened in this case. But I think the hurt will only be worth it if we are putting measures that will not allow us to have a recourse to what was happening before the closure.
Now, with all of what you've said now, let's look at how activities will pick up around those borders. What do you anticipate as a manufacturer?
Well, I think as a manufacturer, I'm happy and I look forward to my members who have established value chain across the West African sub-region to resume their businesses with their subsidiaries and business partners on the other side of the border. I also look forward to increased activities of small and medium traders that trade our goods. If you check all over West Africa, you have Nigerian manufactured products strewn everywhere. So we are going to witness some increased capacity utilization. Our warehouses that are bursting with unsold inventory should find expression in those countries. We should also have ordinary people who live on the economic activities at the border resume their normal life. And the buoyancy of Africanness that we have shared by those border communities should resume. And I think it will be good for us. However, like I said, there are downsides and there are the good sides. So we need to be able to juxtapose the two. We need to be able to live with the positive ones and eliminate the negative ones. My members have called me severally to say that they are happy with what government has done, though it's long in coming. And it is done, I'm particularly glad that it came before the kicking of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I think that is a good plus. Otherwise, it will have left a bad taste in the mouth if we didn't open before then.
Well, many have also raised concerns that the reopening of these borders could actually now lead to a resurgence of smuggling activities again. Do you see that happening?
That would be a very sad thing. And it goes back to what I've said. We must have put in place measures to ensure that it doesn't happen. And honestly, it would be a very huge disappointment if it resumes, because already the country is sipping with concerns about the level of insecurity. I'm hoping that that does not happen, and government should not allow it to happen. We have suffered in terms of social relationships. We have suffered in terms of economic losses. We have suffered in terms of trade. I mean, we should not now suffer insecurity, escalation of importation of small arms and so on from that axis. It will be a very bad day for Nigeria if we allow that to happen. So I'm hoping it wouldn't. I trust that government must have learned some lessons. And in the meetings that I know took place between security agencies, both in Nigeria and our bordering states, that happened throughout this time of closure of the border, must have yielded some useful information that will not allow that to happen again.
Now let's talk about.
I hope it will not.
Well, we all hope so too. But let's talk about some other issues that had always been a point of discussion even before the borders were shut and all that. Like talking about forex availability, electricity, infrastructure, and a host of other issues. Now, how would you rate government's responses to these issues so far?
Well, I think I will pick on forex availability. Ordinarily, it shouldn't be a matter of concern if government is trying to conserve foreign exchange. However, I think you need to prioritize when you have a period of scarcity and when you are in deep crisis, economic crisis. We needed to be able to fund productivity. we needed to be able to ensure that manufacturers, especially, are able to continue with their businesses unhindered. Because no matter how much you try to defend your currency, except you produce and reduce dependence on imported items, you will not succeed. So let me give you a scenario. A manufacturer produces, exports, earns foreign exchange. Let's say he earns $100 and he repatriates the $100. The central bank will take the $100 and give him naira at the official rate. And when he wants to buy his raw materials to produce and export again, he will not get $100 or more to buy from central bank. He will have to go to the black market or bureau de change and buy at a rate that is much higher than what was given to him as his repatriated profit. You are making the manufacturer poorer and you are bedeviling the production process. So some of these measures, and we have said it repeatedly to government, just has to be dropped. Another one that is related to the issue of foreign exchange is having to source your raw materials directly from the person who is producing. Whereas the quantity that is required by some manufacturers is not even worth a phone call to the person who is producing it. You need to buy from secondary sources. Such measures should be discontinued. So there are measures that government has taken, though in good faith, but you need to disaggregate the economic actors so that you will be able to effectively meet the needs that will fuel the economy. This is a time for you to be productivity centric. You cannot treat everybody equally because our contribution to national development, economic growth, and economic activities are not the same. So I think I actually feel very strongly about this, and we need to bring the conversation to an end where we'll be able to play on the side of wisdom, such that we'll be able to grow our economy. At this time all over the world, production activities is the darling of world governments, and Nigeria should not be an exception. I understand that the government is challenged in so many respects. Government is putting up its best performance in other areas, but there are critical issues that must be looked at and quickly too.
Now, last month, we saw the manufacturing PMI go past the 50-point threshold for the first time since the imposed lockdown, signaling improved activities. How fast do you expect manufacturing activities to help to boost local production, especially with the reopening of the borders?
Yes, I think everything should work out to make us head north in terms of our performance. But we need to also interrogate what the increase in PMI that you noticed means, essentially. If you are able to produce more and there's increased activity in your sector, the objective of manufacturing is not just to produce, it is to sell. As a matter of fact, if you continue to produce as a manufacturer, your products will become a burden to you, because you need to hire warehouses and where you need to stock your unplanned inventory, and you will start to pay rent in those places. So if you are not able to sell, and if the cost of producing it is high, and you are not able to sell, your problem is compounded. So I think that government has to take a much wider look at those positive signs that are emerging from the manufacturing sector. The sector that we must watch critically when a nation is going through recession is the productive sector, especially the manufacturing sector, because that is where you can have groundbreaking activities that can change the fortunes of a country. So we are seeing increased activities because we were held down for the most part of 8 months or 9 months. And of course, you will expect buoyancy. The manufacturing sector is a very resilient sector in Nigeria, in spite of all the challenges. So you will continue to see northward movement in our performance when you narrow down on indexes like that. But there are other issues that also speaks to the fact that it is not yet Uhuru.
All right, we need to wrap up the conversation in a few minutes, but then I'd like to get a projection of how Nigeria is most likely going to partake in the Afcfta with the reopening of land borders.
Yes, I think we are now placed in a more comfortable position. Nobody is going to really accuse us again of playing in bad faith. And to that extent, I commend government for doing it before the January 1 commencement date. But at the same time, I think 10 years ago or thereabout, when we conceived and we started working on Afcfta, we didn't imagine that we were going to implement it in a COVID-19 environment. We didn't imagine that most of our engagements across Africa will have to be done virtually. We didn't anticipate that even the bad state of logistics in terms of air links, indexes, and even shipping, we didn't imagine that it would be constrained. So there is need for us to open another conversation as to how Afcfta will survive in a COVID-19 environment. And which means that we need to revisit those critical issues. The rule of origins that is yet to be concluded, and that is critical to trade in goods. The secretariat in Accra that is not fully operational. We need to talk about that. And we need to talk about the other logistics that needs to be put in place. However, I think we made progress along the line. Afcfta offers an opportunity to get exposed to a 1.2, 1.3 billion market. I mean, that's a manufacturer's delight. So we are looking forward to it for whatever should be done. But the governments and the REX and the African Union will have to do a lot to help us to make progress on this very laudable agreement, even in these hard times that we have imposed on us by COVID-19. That's my only concern.
All right, that would be a good point to leave this conversation. Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Segun Ajayi-Kadiri, thank you for sharing some of your time with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.